Welcome back to Versus. My name is Midnight Strike 3625, and as always, today we're going to take two different things, compare them, and pit them against each other to see which one comes out on top. Now, this might be a little bit of a shorter episode, as the ideas that I'm comparing are a little bit more abstract than usual. Usually I take just two different things and compare them, but this time we're going to be comparing two different just kind of ideas. Studio albums versus their live counterpart. And the reason why I'm saying live counterpart is because I'm not limiting, studio albums versus live albums. I'm not limiting the live part to just live albums. I'm saying, concerts, live footage, music videos, just anything that is live by the band. So, be it going to a concert and seeing the band firsthand and seeing it firsthand versus listening to a studio album or studio recording where the production is a little bit more fine-tuned and they have the equipment and means necessary to actually go in and tweak the recording. But, I digress. Then again, I'm just asking, do you like the studio version better or do you like the live versions better of most of the songs that you listen to? Or is it kind of a mix of the two? Because for me, it's a little bit of a mix of the two because there are a lot of albums out there that I prefer the live versions of. There are a lot of songs in particular that I prefer the live versions of, but there are also those albums where I just can't really stand to hear the live version because it's just not as good, or it's not as just crisp, it's not as audible or appealing to the ear per se. So an example of this would probably be the live album Live at River Plate. While it is a very good effort by AC/DC on their part, the songs just seem a bit slower, and this era of AC/DC just kind of isn't really fitting their style of playing the songs as fast as they should be played, and that's why I say I'm not limiting it to just live performances, because they actually did have a lot of great performances back in the late 70s or even early 70s, and up to about the early 90s. So, that era, for me, is probably my favorite era in AC/DC's history. As for bands like Metallica, probably mid-80s or early 80s even to mid-90s is probably their peak, for me at least. Of course, most of these bands are still performing today that I'm going to name off and still perform very well live, but, they're just not as good as they once were. I mean, bands in their prime, if I listen to, say, a recording by Dream Theater, as I said in my last video about dubs and live albums, I listened to a live recording of, I believe it was Metropolis Part 1, and I love it. I like it better than the studio recording. It's just amazing. But then I listened to another one from like 2009, 2011, and it's not as good. So for me, I suppose it depends on the recording, and for the most part, I'm going to go with the studio version, to go, as my go-to. So, I'm not going to listen to a live version if I've never heard the studio version before. So I want to actually, go to the studio version to see what the song, was meant to sound like, per se. So, basically, that's my opinion. I do like the live versions of songs such as Whole Lotta Rosie and Hell Ain't a Bad Place to Be off of If You Want Blood, You Got It. But then again, that's saying a lot because that is my favorite live album of all time, which I will get into as soon as I get my AC/DC discography done, but that won't come until my Assassin's Creed series is over and done with. So basically, that being said, that is my opinion. I mostly like studio versions of songs, or, certain recordings, I suppose, but when it comes down to it, for the most part, I would prefer studio, but there are those rare occurrences, such as the AC/DC songs that I named, as well as some songs off of Live Shit, Binge, and Purge off of Metallica's album, and of course the Dream Theater stuff, and there might be more that I'm forgetting, but, some bands are just amazing live. Some bands are perfect live. Some bands sound exactly, like their studio albums live, even better. So, Creed, for example, back in the day. Yeah, I know a lot of people who watch my channel probably don't like Creed as much, but I actually really like Creed, so, I'll admit it. They sounded amazing back in 1999. Look up Woodstock 99, Say I, if you've heard the original song. Listen to the studio version, and then listen to the version at Woodstock. He sounds so much better live. So, that's another one that, I just thought of. But case in point, usually I will go with the studio album because of the production, because of just the way the guitars sound because of how clear everything is, and it just sounds better overall because there's a certain, high level of expectation that goes along with recording these albums. So with that, thank you very much for watching my Versus episode. This is Midnight Strike 3625. Keep calm and rock on.